They dug her grave the day she lost her sight. She was 6 years old. The second plot sat beside her mother's stone, waiting. The town assumed the blind child wouldn't last the winter. 4 years later, it remained empty. A mouth of frozen earth beside fresh flowers Caleb placed every Sunday. Dawn broke cold over the cemetery. Snow gathered on his shoulders as he stood between the graves, one filled, one hollow. Behind him a small voice cut the silence. "Papa, why did they dig my grave?" He didn't turn. His jaw tightened. Leia moved closer, her bare hand reaching for his coat, fingers like ice. "I'm still here, Papa." He pulled away, not cruelly, just away. Her hand dropped. The wind howled across the frozen plains, and the empty grave stared back at him like an accusation. She couldn't see the headstone, already carved with her name, but he saw it every time he closed his eyes. 3 weeks passed like slow bleeding. Caleb watched his daughter move through the ranch house like a ghost, hands trailing walls, counting steps, speaking only when spoken to. She'd learned to navigate the darkness, but she hadn't learned to live in it. Doc Martha Greystone came for Sunday supper, her medical bag always at hand even on social calls. She was the only person Caleb allowed past the threshold anymore. The only one who knew Sarah, the only one who'd held Leia the night the fire took her sight. She watched Leia eat in silence, cutting her food into careful squares, never lifting her eyes from the plate she couldn't see. After the meal, Doc Martha cornered Caleb on the porch. "She needs something to care for. She has everything she needs." "She has things, Caleb, not purpose." Doc Martha's voice was firm, but not unkind. "That child thinks she's a burden, something that needs protecting. She needs to feel needed herself." Caleb said nothing, stared at the horizon where snow met sky, both the same shade of empty. "Get her a guide dog," Doc Martha continued. "Something she can love, something that needs her back. Dogs don't love, they just follow food." "Then you've forgotten what it means to be loved." She picked up her bag. "There's a shelter in town. Old mission building. Ben Farrow runs it. Tell him I sent you." She left him standing there, cold settling into his bones. That night, Leia's voice drifted from her room. "Mama, if I had a friend, would it love me even though I can't see?" Caleb closed his eyes, made a decision he didn't believe in. The wagon rattled over frozen ruts 2 days later. Leia sat beside him, bundled in wool, her small hand gripping the edge of the seat. "Will the dog love me, Papa?" "Dogs obey commands, that's all." "That's sad. That's honest." Snow began to fall as cold water came into view. A collection of weathered buildings crouched against the wind. The old mission sat at the edge of town, its cross still visible through gaps in the roof. The moment they opened the door, sound exploded. Barking, whining, paws scrambling against wire. Leia flinched. A man emerged from the back, tall, weathered, military bearings still visible in his posture. Ben Farrow. He wiped his hands on a rag, nodded. "Doc Martha said you might come." "Need a guide dog for my daughter." Ben's eyes flicked to Leia, softened. "Come on then. Let's see who speaks to you, little miss." They walked the row of kennels. Each one erupted as they passed. A golden retriever, all energy and tongue. A collie that pressed against the wire, whimpering. A young German shepherd Ben recommended. Smart, strong, good temperament. But Leia shook her head at each one, listening. Then she stopped. "Kennel 12. Silence." "Not that one," Ben said quietly. "Move along, Mr. Mercer." But Leia knelt, pressed her face close to the bars. Inside, a German shepherd lay in the corner. Scarred muzzle. One eye clouded white, ribs showing through dull fur. He faced the wall, motionless except for the slow rise of his breathing. "What's wrong with him?" Leia whispered. Ben exhaled. "That's Shadow, retired K9. Worked with Deputy Fuller for 6 years, 3 years back. Outlaws hit the Coldwater Bank. Fuller went in without backup. Shadow was with him." Caleb listened, something cold turning in his gut. Outlaws shot Fuller in the chest. Shadow took down 2 men, but the third shot him in the shoulder. He dragged Fuller out anyway. Deputy died in the street, and Shadow. Ben shook his head. He stopped everything. Stopped working. Stopped while trusting. Just lays there waiting to die. "We're putting him down next week. Ain't no point keeping a dog that won't work." He's not broken," Leia said softly. "He's scared." She reached through the bars. "Leia, don't—" Caleb started. But she was already speaking, voice barely above a breath. "I can't see you, but I know you're scared. Me too." Shadow's ear twitched. Silence hung like held breath. Then, slow as resurrection, the dog lifted his head. His clouded eye found the girl's face. His good eye held something ancient, something that recognized its own kind. He rose, legs trembling, bones clicking, stepped forward, pressed his cold nose to her trembling palm through the bars. Leia gasped, smiled. The first real smile Caleb had seen in 4 years. "Papa," she whispered. He stood up. Ben Pharaoh's voice was rough. "I'll be damned. He ain't moved for nobody in half a year." And Shadow didn't pull away. Just stood there, breathing against the child's hand, something flickering behind his eyes that looked almost like hope. "Can we take him home?" Leia turned her blind gaze toward her father. Caleb's throat tightened. "He's dying. He's useless." The words hung ugly in the air. Leia's face didn't change, but her voice carried weight beyond her 10 years. "So was I. But Mama didn't leave me." Silence. The barking dogs faded. The world narrowed to a blind girl, a broken dog, and a father who suddenly couldn't breathe. Caleb pulled out a roll of bills. "I'll take him." Ben waved the money away. "No charge, Mr. Mercer. If that dog's got one more fight in him, he's earned the right to die warm." Shadow didn't resist when Ben opened the kennel, didn't wag his tail, just walked slowly to Leia's side and stood there, scarred, broken, but standing. She rested her hand on his head. "You're safe now," she whispered. And something in the dog's eyes said he almost believed her. The wagon ride home was silent except for the creak of wood and the whisper of runners on snow. Shadow lay in the back, Leia beside him, her hand resting on his matted fur. She'd refused to sit up front with her father. Caleb glanced back once. The dog's good eye was open, watching the white landscape slide past. Not afraid, not hopeful, just awake. The ranch appeared through the snow, sprawling, prosperous, empty. 3 ranch hands stood by the barn, their breath clouding in the cold air. They stared, as Caleb helped Leia down, as Shadow followed slowly behind her. "That the Fuller dog?" Tom Hendricks, the foreman, stepped forward. "Heard he killed 2 men at that bank job." "He protected his officer," Caleb said flatly. "That's what he was trained for." "Still killed him." "So have I. You have a problem with that?" Tom looked at the dog, scarred, limping, ribs showing, and shook his head. "Just surprised is all. Didn't figure you for charity work." "I'm not." Caleb led Shadow toward the barn. "Just keeping my daughter from crying." But that wasn't quite true, and they both knew it. The barn was warm with the animal heat, fresh straw bed laid in the corner, water bucket, food bowl with venison scraps. Shadow sniffed the food, then lay down facing the wall. Didn't eat. Didn't drink. Just curled into himself like he was trying to disappear. Leia knelt beside him, ran her hands gently over his scarred head. "You're home now," she whispered. "You don't have to be scared anymore." Shadow's tail twitched, once, barely visible. When Caleb tried to lead Leia back to the house, she dug her heels in. "I want to stay with him. He needs rest." "So do I." Her blind eyes turned toward him with eerie precision. "Please, Papa." "He's alone." "Leia, you left me alone after Mama died." Her voice was small, but sharp as glass. "Don't make him be alone, too." The words hit like fists. Caleb's jaw worked. Finally, 1 hour. "Then you come inside?" He left a lantern burning. Stood outside, the barn door, in the snow, arms crossed, listening, soft murmurs. The sound of small hands moving through fur. "My mama died 4 years ago," Leia was saying. "The house caught fire. She saved me, but she didn't make it out. I couldn't see after. The doctor said the smoke hurt my eyes from the inside. Papa blames himself. He was gone that night, had business in another town." Silence. "I think he wishes I died instead of Mama. Not because he doesn't love me, because then he wouldn't have to look at me and remember." More silence. "But you understand, don't you? Your person died too, and you think it's your fault." A soft whine. The first sound Shadow had made since leaving the shelter. Caleb closed his eyes. Let the snow gather on his shoulders. Dawn broke clear and cold. Caleb entered the barn expecting to find Leia awake, cold, maybe frightened. Instead, he stopped dead. She was asleep, curled against Shadow's side, her head resting on his shoulder. The dog was awake, his head lifted one ear forward, watching the door with steady alertness. When he saw Caleb, he didn't growl, didn't bare teeth, just watched, protective, calm. His tail moved once, a slow, deliberate sweep, and something in Caleb's chest cracked open just slightly. Doc Martha arrived an hour later with breakfast and her no-nonsense efficiency. She found them still in the barn, Leia waking slowly, Shadow now sitting upright, his body curved around hers like a living shield. "Well," Doc Martha said softly. "Would you look at that?" He hasn't eaten," Caleb said. "Won't touch the food." Have you tried having her feed him?" Caleb frowned. Why would that matter? Doc Martha just smiled. Dogs know who needs them, and they're better judges than people. She was right. When Leia held out a piece of venison, speaking softly, "Please eat, Shadow. I need you strong." The dog took it gently from her fingers, chewed slowly, swallowed, took another piece. By the time the bowl was empty, his tail was moving steadily, and Leia was crying with relief. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." The days that followed were small miracles. Shadow began following Leia everywhere, not at heel like a trained dog, but close beside her, his shoulder pressed to her hip. When she reached for a door, he'd nudge it with his nose. When she was about to step wrong, he'd shift his weight, blocking her path. He wasn't a guide dog, hadn't been trained for it, but he was learning, watching, adjusting. "That ain't a pet," Tom Hendricks said one afternoon, watching Shadow guide Leia around a mud puddle. "That's a damn guardian angel with fur." Caleb stood on the porch, coffee growing cold in his hands, and couldn't argue. 1 week in, Leia decided to teach Shadow a recall command. She stood in the yard, snow falling gently, and pursed her lips. 2 notes, rising, clear, a melody. Shadow's ears perked. She whistled again. He trotted over, curious. "Good." Leia clapped her hands, laughing. "You know my song." Caleb felt something twist in his chest. That whistle. He knew it. Sarah used to call Leia in from the fields with that exact sound. 2 notes, rising like a question, looking for an answer. The first time Leia had whistled it after the fire, Caleb had to leave the room. Now hearing it again, seeing Shadow respond to it, seeing his daughter's face light up, he turned away before the burning in his eyes could become something else. That evening, as the sun set red behind the mountains, Leia sat in the barn brushing Shadow's coat. The dog sat perfectly still, eyes half closed, finally beginning to look less like a skeleton wrapped in fur. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a length of red wool, a scarf, faded and worn, edges frayed. "This was Mama's," she said softly, wrapping it around Shadow's neck with careful hands. "She wore it the night she saved me. It still smells like her sometimes, like lavender and wood smoke." She fumbled with the knot, her blind fingers slow but determined. "Mama's scarf kept me warm when I was scared. Now it'll keep you warm." Shadow sat motionless, letting her tie it. When she finished, she rested her forehead against his. "You're my best friend, Shadow." The dog's tail thumped against the straw, 3 times, steady as a heartbeat. From the doorway, Caleb watched. That scarf, Sarah had been wearing it the night she died. They'd found it clutched in Leia's hands when they pulled her from the burning house. For 4 years, Leia had kept it under her pillow, never letting anyone touch it. Now she'd given it to a broken dog. Caleb's throat closed. His hands shook. For 4 years, he'd kept everyone at arm's length, including his daughter. Told himself it was protection. Told himself she was better off without his touch, his guilt, his failure. But watching her now, watching her pour love into a creature everyone else had given up on, he realized she'd been trying to teach him something all along, that broken things could still be sacred. That love didn't need sight to see, that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to keep dying inside to honor the dead. Shadow looked up, met Caleb's eyes across the barn, and for the first time since Sarah's funeral, Caleb felt something other than cold. The second week brought a thaw, not in the weather, but in the house. Shadow had gained weight. His ribs no longer showed through his coat, and his movements had lost their trembling uncertainty. He'd become Leia's constant companion, positioning himself with an intelligence that seemed almost human. When she reached for the table, he'd press his shoulder against the edge, giving her a landmark. When stairs approached, he'd stop, wait for her hand to find his back, then descend slowly beside her. He never pulled, never rushed. "It's like he can read her mind," Doc Martha observed one afternoon, watching Shadow guide Leia around furniture in the sitting room. "He watches her feet," Caleb said. "Learns her patterns." "It's more than that," Doc Martha sipped her tea. "That dog loves her. And love's got its own intelligence." Caleb said nothing. He'd been watching too, from doorways, from windows, from the careful distance he'd maintained for 4 years, watching his daughter bloom in ways he'd forgotten were possible. She smiled now, laughed when Shadow's cold nose pressed against her palm, sang to him old hymns Sarah used to hum while cooking, but she never asked Caleb for anything, never reached for his hand. The space between them had calcified into something neither knew how to cross. Tom Hendricks found Caleb in the barn that evening, oiling tack by lamplight. "Got a problem, boss." Then Caleb looked up. "Some of the men are uncomfortable with the dog, say he's too protective. Growled at Pete this morning when he got too close to your girl." Pete get hurt?" "No, but..." "Then there's no problem." Caleb returned to the leather. "Shadow's doing what I pay him to do." "You don't pay a dog, Mr. Mercer." "I feed him, same thing." Tom hesitated. Then, "The men also say you still won't touch her, your own daughter. They're wondering if..." "Get out." Tom left without another word. Caleb sat alone in the lamplight, hands still, jaw tight. "They're wondering if you even love her." The words echoed like accusations. That night, Leia came to dinner wearing a blue dress Sarah had made, now hemmed shorter for her growing frame. She moved through the house with increasing confidence, Shadow at her side, barely needing to count steps anymore. They ate in silence, fork on plate, the crackle of fire. Finally, Leia spoke. Papa? Yes. Are you angry at me? Caleb's hand froze halfway to his coffee. No. Then why don't you ever touch me anymore? The question hung in the air like smoke. You used to hold my hand when we walked. You used to carry me when I was tired. But after Mama died, you stopped. Her blind eyes fixed somewhere near his face. Did I do something wrong? No. His voice was rough. You did nothing wrong. Then why? Caleb stood abruptly, chair scraping. You should sleep. It's late. He walked out before she could say more. Shadow followed Leia to her room, and through the walls, Caleb heard her crying softly into the dog's fur. He poured whiskey, didn't drink it, just stared at the amber liquid like it held answers. Doc Martha arrived unannounced the next morning, medical bag in one hand, determination in her eyes. She found Caleb on the porch, watching snow clouds gather. You can't keep punishing yourself by punishing her. I'm not. You won't touch her. Barely speak to her. That child thinks you blame her for Sarah's death. I blame myself. Then tell her that, because right now, she thinks she's the reason you're cold. Doc Martha's voice softened. Caleb, you're killing what's left of your family. He said nothing. Doc Martha noticed the oil lamp in the window, burning even in daylight. She'd seen it lit every time she visited, day or night. You still light Sarah's lamp? Every night. His voice was flat, in case anyone lost finds their way home. Sarah ain't lost, Caleb. She's gone. Doc Martha's words were gentle but firm. But Leia's here, right here, and she's the one who needs you to come home. She left him with that. Caleb stared at the lamp, at its useless flame burning in the daylight, and felt something old and bitter rise in his throat. What good is light when you're already dead inside? Ben Farrow rode out that afternoon, surprising them all. He'd brought Shadow's old badge collar, leather, worn, with a tarnished brass plate, Canine Shadow, Coldwater Sheriff. Thought the girl might want this, he said, dismounting. Piece of his history. Leia held the collar with reverence, her fingers tracing the engraved letters she couldn't see. Will you tell me about him? She asked. About what he did before? Ben glanced at Caleb, who nodded. They sat in the barn, Leia between them, Shadow's head resting on her lap. Shadow was the best canine in the territory, Ben began. Deputy Fuller trained him from a pup. Smart, loyal, brave as they come. They worked together 6 years. Cattle rustlers, bank robberies, fugitives. Shadow never failed. He paused, voice roughening. 3 years back, the Draven gang hit the Coldwater Bank. Deputy Fuller went in without backup. Always was too brave for his own good. Shadow was with him. Leia's fingers tightened in Shadow's fur. 3 outlaws inside, Fuller announced himself. They opened fire, shot him in the chest, clean through. Shadow attacked, took down 2 men before the third shot him in the shoulder. But he kept fighting, dragged Fuller out into the street, even with a bullet in him. Ben's jaw worked. Fuller died right there in the snow. Shadow standing over him, blood on both of them, still trying to protect a dead man. A tear slipped down Leia's cheek. After that, Shadow stopped everything. Wouldn't work, wouldn't obey. Just shut down. It's like he thought he'd failed. Like saving a life wasn't enough if the man still died. Caleb listened from the doorway, something cold and familiar coiling in his gut. A protector who failed, who loved someone, tried to save them, and has been dying inside ever since. He saw himself in that story. Saw his own reflection in a broken dog's eyes, Sarah begging him to stay home. Him riding out anyway for a land deal that could wait. The fire, the screaming, arriving too late. His wife dead, his daughter blind, both because he wasn't there. Leia hugged Shadow tight, her voice breaking. You didn't fail. You loved him. That's not failing. Shadow's tail moved slowly, uncertainly, and Caleb felt something crack deeper inside. Not healing yet, but fracturing toward it. The first necessary break before something new could grow. That night, Leia hung Shadow's badge collar beside the lamp in the window. So Mama and Shadow both have something here, she explained. To remember their home. Caleb stared at the collar beside the flame. 2 symbols of love that had tried and been broken. Leia, he said quietly. She turned toward his voice, hopeful. He wanted to tell her. Wanted to say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I've been gone, even when I'm standing right beside you. But the words stuck in his throat like glass. Sleep well, was all he managed. Her face fell, just slightly, just enough. You too, Papa. Shadow followed her to bed, and Caleb stood alone, watching the lamp burn, wondering how long a man could keep lighting fires for ghosts while the living went cold beside him. Outside, the storm clouds finally broke, snow began to fall. And somewhere in the distance, wolves howled, hungry, circling, waiting. The thaw came early, catching everyone by surprise. Snow melted in rushing streams. Mud appeared where white had ruled for months. Dead grass emerged like old secrets to light. Leia woke one morning and announced, "I want to visit Mama's grave." Caleb, pouring coffee, went still. "Why?" "I want to tell her about Shadow." "Your mother's gone, Leia." "I know." Her voice was patient, as if explaining something simple to a child. "But I still want to talk to her." "Don't you?" He didn't answer. Hadn't visited Sarah's grave since the funeral, except for those Sunday flower deliveries. Quick, silent, escaping before memory could catch him. "Please, Papa." The word, please, said so quietly, so small. He couldn't refuse. The cemetery sat on a hillside overlooking the valley. Mud sucked at their boots as they climbed. Shadow walked between them, steady and sure, the red scarf still knotted around his neck. Sarah's stone was simple. Sarah Catherine Mercer, 1842 to 1876, beloved wife and mother. Beside it, the empty grave gaped like an unhealed wound. Leia knelt in the mud, her hands finding the stone's face, tracing letters she couldn't read. "Hi, Mama." Her voice was soft. "I brought someone to meet you. His name is Shadow. He's a dog. He was sad like me, but we're helping each other now." Shadow sat beside her, ears forward, watching the horizon with steady alertness. "He's very brave. He saved his person once, but his person died anyway. Doc Martha says sometimes love isn't enough to stop death, but it's still worth doing." Caleb stood apart, rigid, hands clenched in his pockets. "Papa still lights your lamp every night." Leia's fingers moved to the carved flowers on the stone. "I think he's waiting for you to come home." Something broke loose in Caleb's chest, sharp, sudden, like ice cracking under weight. He turned away, shoulders shaking, jaw clenched against the sound trying to escape his throat. Leia stood, mud on her knees. "Papa?" "We should go." His voice was gravel. "Are you crying?" "No." It's okay if you are. I cry about Mama too. I said we should go." He walked back to the wagon, leaving her standing there between the graves. One filled, one empty. Both his fault. That night, he found her in the barn. She was brushing Shadow's coat by lantern light, singing one of Sarah's old hymns, Amazing Grace, slow and sweet. Caleb stood in the doorway, listened, let the sound cut him open. When the song ended, he stepped inside, sat down on a hay bale across from her. Didn't speak for a long time. "Your mother died because of me." Leia's hands stilled in Shadow's fur. "The fire wasn't your fault, Papa." "It was." The words came like pulling nails from wood, painful, necessary. "She begged me to stay home that night. You were sick with fever, she was scared. But I had a land deal in Bitter Creek. Big money. Could have waited. Should have waited." His voice roughened. "I told her I'd be back by morning. Kissed her forehead. Didn't even check on you sleeping. Just left." Leia sat motionless, Shadow's ears flattened. "Fire started an hour after I rode out. Chimney spark, they said, jumped to the curtains. Your mother got you out first, carried you into the yard. You were safe." He swallowed hard. "But she went back in. They said she went for something. A picture, maybe, of you as a baby." The roof came down before she made it out. His hands shook. He gripped his knees to still them. "I got home the next morning. House was just gone, smoking, black. They'd already buried her in a quick grave because of the burns. And you were in Doc Martha's clinic, screaming. Couldn't stop screaming. The smoke had burned your eyes from the inside. Doc said you'd never see again." Leia's face was wet, but she didn't make a sound. "I did that," Caleb said. "I chose money over my family. I wasn't there when you needed me. And Sarah died, and you lost your sight. And it's all because I left." He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in years. "That's why I can't touch you, Leia. Every time I reach for you, I remember I wasn't there. I built you the best room, bought you everything, but I don't deserve to hold you, don't deserve to be needed." Silence filled the barn like water rising. Then Leia spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. "Mama didn't die because you left, Papa. She died because she loved me enough to go back." She turned her face toward him with eerie precision. "And I didn't lose my sight because of you. I lost it because of fire. You didn't light the fire. You didn't make the roof fall. You just weren't there." She reached out blindly, found Shadow's head, drew strength from him. "But you're here now, and I need you now. Not the room, not the things. You." Caleb's throat closed. He stood, took a half step toward her, then stopped. "I don't deserve to be needed." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He turned and walked out into the night, leaving her there with the only creature in the world who'd learned to love her without condition. Shadow watched him go, amber eyes unblinking, then rested his head on Leia's lap while she cried into his fur, the red scarf still tied around his neck, a circle of love that couldn't quite close. Later, much later, Caleb stood at his bedroom window. The lamp burned in the glass below, steady, pointless. He'd lit it every night for 4 years, a ritual of penance, a prayer to someone who'd never answer. But Leia was right. Sarah wasn't coming home, she was gone. And while he'd been lighting fires for a ghost, his daughter had been freezing in the dark. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass. What kind of man builds an empire but can't hold his own child? Outside, clouds gathered. The wind picked up. Tomorrow, he knew, would bring more than weather. Something was coming. Something that would force his hand. He could feel it in his bones, the way animals sense storms. The reckoning was close. 2 weeks later, supplies ran low. Caleb hitched the wagon for a trip to Coldwater, and Leia insisted on coming. She wanted to thank Ben Farrow for Shadow's collar, wanted to show him how well the dog was doing. Caleb agreed, though unease sat in his gut like a stone. The town had been talking. He'd heard whispers about the girl and her killer dog, about Caleb Mercer growing soft in his grief, about whether a blind child should be left alone with an animal trained to kill. But Leia deserved to leave the ranch sometimes. Deserved to feel the world beyond fences. So they went. Coldwater bustled with mid-morning commerce. Wagons clogged the main street. Merchants called out prices. Children ran between buildings, shrieking with laughter. Caleb tied the horses outside Henderson's general store. Wait here with Shadow. I'll be 10 minutes. Can we walk to the shelter? It's just down the street. He hesitated. The shelter was 3 buildings away, visible from here. Stay on the boardwalk. Don't talk to strangers. I won't. She took Shadow's collar in her left hand, her right trailing the storefront wall. The dog moved with her perfectly, steady, alert, protective. Caleb watched until they reached the shelter door, then went inside. He should have stayed. Leia was petting one of Ben's new rescue dogs, a collie pup, when 3 men stumbled out of the saloon across the street, drunk, loud, looking for entertainment. The leader was Cole Draven, a ranch hand who worked for Silas Crane, the town banker. Big man, mean drunk, known for rough handling of animals and rougher handling of people who couldn't fight back. He spotted Leia and grinned. Well, that the blind girl with the killer mutt? His companions laughed. They crossed the street with deliberate swagger. Shadow's body went rigid. A low growl rumbled deep in his chest. Easy, Shadow, Leia whispered, her hand tightening on his collar. It's okay. Hey, blind girl, Cole's voice dripped mockery. That your dog? Heard he used to tear men apart. He protects people. Leia's voice was small but steady. He's good. Good? Cole laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. That mutt's got blood on his teeth. Probably just waiting to tear into someone soft, someone helpless. He stepped closer, too close. Shadow's growl deepened. His lips pulled back, showing teeth. Cole, leave her alone. Ben Farrow appeared in the shelter doorway, voice sharp. She ain't done nothing to you. Just having a conversation, old man. No harm in that. But Cole's eyes were mean. His hand shot out, grabbed Leia's arm hard enough to bruise. Let's see if that dog's as dangerous as they say. Shadow exploded. No warning, no hesitation. Pure instinct. He lunged, teeth flashing, and clamped onto Cole's wrist. Not a killing bite, but a warning. A releaser bite. Cole screamed. Blood bloomed red against his dirty sleeve. Shadow let go immediately, positioning himself between Leia and the threat, hackles raised, eyes wild. Cole stumbled back, clutching his wrist. That goddamn animal attacked me. You all saw it. A crowd gathered instantly. Voices overlapped. Did you see that? Bit him unprovoked. Told you that dog was dangerous. Ben rushed forward. Cole grabbed the girl first. Shadow was defending her. I didn't do nothing, just touched her arm. You grabbed her hard enough to leave marks, you son of a... Enough. Sheriff Wade pushed through the crowd, hand on his pistol. What happened here? Everyone spoke at once. Through it all, Leia knelt beside Shadow, arms wrapped around his neck, whispering, It's okay, you're okay. You didn't do anything wrong. But Shadow was shaking. His training, years of discipline, warring with instinct. He'd attacked a human. Broken the first rule. Failed again. Then Caleb arrived, pushing through the crowd, taking in the scene with mounting horror. Blood on Cole's wrist, Shadow panting, wild-eyed, Leia crying, and the town watching with hungry, judgmental eyes. By sundown, everyone knew. By evening, the town council convened an emergency hearing in the meeting hall. Caleb stood at the front with Leia and Shadow, Ben Farrow beside them as witness. Doc Martha in the back, arms crossed, face hard. On the opposite side, Cole Draven, wrist bandaged dramatically. And behind him, like a spider in a web, sat Silas Crane. The banker was a thin man with cold eyes and a smile that never reached them. He owned half the mortgages in Coldwater, controlled the council, pulled strings like a puppet master. Council Chairman Foster banged his gavel. "We're here regarding the incident this afternoon. Cole Draven claims the dog known as Shadow attacked him without provocation." That's a lie," Ben said sharply. Cole grabbed the girl. Shadow defended her. "A blind child's word against a grown man's?" Silas Crane stood smoothly, hands clasped. "Gentlemen, the facts are simple. A dog with a history of violence drew blood in public. The law regarding vicious animals is clear." "Shadow isn't vicious," Leia's voice rang out, high and desperate. "He was protecting me." Young lady," Crane's voice dripped false sympathy. "I understand you're attached to the animal. But attachment doesn't change facts. That dog has killed before. Today it attacked again. How long before it kills again?" "He saved people," Leia was crying now. "He saved his officer. He saved me." "And then his officer died. Anyway," Crane turned to the council. "This animal is unpredictable, dangerous. We have children in this town, families. We cannot risk another attack." Caleb found his voice. "Cole grabbed my daughter. Shadow did exactly what he was trained to do, protect his person. Your daughter, Mr. Mercer, who cannot testify reliably to what she saw, because she saw nothing." Crane's smile was a knife. "Whereas Mr. Draven and 2 witnesses clearly observed an unprovoked attack." Those witnesses were drunk," Doc Martha called from the back. "And Cole Draven's been mean and violent for years. If Shadow bit him, he deserved it." That's slander, Doctor." "It's truth," the council murmured among themselves. All of them owed Crane money. All of them knew which way to vote. Chairman Foster cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer, do you have anything else to add?" Caleb looked at his daughter, tears streaming down her blind face, arms wrapped around Shadow's neck, looked at the dog, shaking, terrified, waiting for judgment he'd faced before. "I'll pay any fine. Any restitution. Name your price." "Some things," Crane said softly, "even you cannot buy." And the council voted 4-1. Foster's voice was heavy. "The dog known as Shadow is hereby declared a public danger. It is to be destroyed within 48 hours. Sheriff Wade will carry out the sentence." "No!" Leia's scream tore through the hall. "No, please. He didn't do anything wrong." She collapsed, sobbing. Shadow pressed against her, whining, trying to comfort her while his own death sentence hung in the air. Caleb tried to speak, to argue, to threaten, to offer everything he owned, but Crane's smile stopped him cold. "You've lived by the law your whole life, Mercer, benefited from it, built your empire on property rights and legal protections. You can't pick and choose when the law applies." The truth of it hit like a fist. He'd spent 30 years using the law to protect his wealth. Now that same law would kill the one thing his daughter loved, and there was nothing his money could do. They rode home in silence. Leia refused to let go of Shadow, sat in the back of the wagon with him, the red scarf clutched in one hand, her face buried in his fur. "They can't take you," she whispered over and over. "I won't let them." But she was a blind 10-year-old child, and they both knew she had no power to stop anything. At the ranch, Leia locked herself in the barn with Shadow, refused to come out, refused to eat. Caleb sat on the porch as darkness fell, staring at nothing. Doc Martha found him there an hour later. "You gonna let them do this?" "What choice do I have?" His voice was hollow. The law's wrong." Her words were steel. "That dog saved your daughter's life, saved her spirit. And you're just gonna let them kill him because some corrupt banker says so? If I resist, they'll arrest me too. Then what happens to Leia?" "Then you fight smarter." Doc Martha leaned close. "There's more than one kind of law, Caleb. There's the law written on paper, and there's the law written on hearts. You've been following the wrong one your whole life." She straightened. "Your wife would have fought. She'd have broken every law in the territory to protect what mattered. Sarah's dead. And you've been dead right alongside her. But that girl in the barn, she's alive. And she needs you to be alive too." Doc Martha left him sitting there, alone. The lamp burning in the window, useless, meaningless light for a ghost who'd never come home. In the barn, Leia's voice rose in song, broken, desperate. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound." Shadow howled, a long, mournful sound that carried across the plains like grief made audible. And Caleb sat frozen, watching his world collapse around him, finally understanding what it meant to be powerless, to have everything, and nothing that mattered. The night stretched long and cold. Caleb couldn't sleep, couldn't sit still, couldn't breathe past the weight pressing on his chest. He walked the ranch, past the barn where Leia had finally cried herself to sleep beside Shadow, past the empty corrals, past the fence line where his land met the wild plains beyond. The wind carried the smell of coming snow. Spring's thaw had been a lie. Winter was returning for one last bitter breath. He stood at the boundary of everything he'd built. Thousands of acres, prime grazing land, water rights, timber. An empire carved from wilderness through sweat and ruthlessness and careful adherence to law. What good was any of it? He couldn't buy his wife back from the grave. Couldn't buy his daughter's sight. Couldn't even save a dog from a corrupt banker's vendetta. 30 years of building, of accumulating, of winning. And when it mattered most, he was powerless. I chose money over my family, and I'm still choosing wrong. The thought arrived like a blade between ribs. Tomorrow the sheriff would come, would take Shadow, would put a bullet in the dog's head while Leia screamed and Caleb stood by, following the law, like he always had, because that's what good men did. They obeyed, they submitted, they trusted the system, even when the system was broken, even when obedience meant cruelty. He thought of Shadow in that kennel, lying with his face to the wall, waiting to die, broken by a world that had taken everything he'd loved. That's me, that's what I've become, a man who'd stopped fighting, stopped feeling, just lay down and waited for the end while the living needed him to stand up. Footsteps behind him. Doc Martha emerged from the darkness, shawl wrapped tight against the cold. She'd been walking too, unable to sleep, unable to accept what was coming. They stood together in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I had a son once. Caleb had heard rumors, never asked. Doc Martha didn't talk about her past. Daniel. He was 17 when they hanged him. The words fell heavy as stones. There was a Shoshone boy working at the mill, Tommy Redhawk. Good kid, quiet. Some of the White Ranch hands didn't like him being there. Thought he was taking a job that belonged to one of them. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. They cornered Tommy behind the mill one night. Beat him bloody. Daniel heard the noise, came running. He was always like that. Couldn't stand by when someone was hurting. Caleb listened, something cold settling in his gut. He fought them off, grabbed a piece of lumber, swung wild, caught one of them, Jed Stokes, across the temple. Jed went down. Didn't get back up. Doc Martha's jaw tightened. It was self-defense, clear as day. 5 witnesses said so, including Tommy. But Jed Stokes' father owned half the county, had judges in his pocket. And the jury, she swallowed hard. They said a dead white man was worth more than a live Indian lover. Hanged my Daniel in the town square. I watched, held his hand until they put the hood over his head. Silence stretched between them. After that, I stopped believing in law, started believing in mercy. Because mercy's the only thing that saves us when the law fails. Caleb's throat was tight. What am I supposed to do? Same thing my son did. Doc Martha looked at him directly. The right thing, even if it costs everything. They'll arrest me. Maybe. Or maybe you'll remind this town what justice actually looks like. She turned to leave, then paused. Caleb, you've spent 4 years punishing yourself. But punishment doesn't heal anything. It just makes the wound deeper. I failed them. You did. And you've been failing them ever since by refusing to try again. Her voice softened. Sarah didn't die, so you could build monuments to guilt. She died saving your daughter. Honor that by actually loving the child she saved. She walked back toward the house, leaving him alone with the wind and the stars and the weight of decision. Caleb stood there until his feet went numb. Then he did something he hadn't done since Sarah's funeral. He prayed. Not in a church, not on his knees, not with pretty words or proper forms. Just standing under the vast Wyoming sky, speaking into the silence. Sarah, if you're listening. His voice broke. He started again. I failed you. I wasn't there when you needed me. I let our daughter grow up thinking I didn't love her. I built walls instead of bridges. I chose safety over courage. I chose law over love. The wind picked up, cold and sharp. But I won't fail her again. I don't know what's right anymore. Spent so long following rules, I forgot how to follow my heart. But I know that dog loves her. I know he's good. And I know the law that would kill him is wrong. His hands unclenched. His shoulders dropped. So I'm going to do what you would have done. I'm going to choose her, even if it costs everything. Even if I lose the ranch, the money, the respect, all of it. Something loosened in his chest. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. I'm going to save what she loves, because that's what love does. It saves what it can, even when it can't save everything. The prayer ended. The wind carried his words away. He turned back toward the house, toward the lamp burning in the window, that useless, stubborn light he'd kept lit for 4 years. But tonight, looking at it, he understood something new. Maybe the lamp wasn't for Sarah. Maybe it never had been. Maybe it was for him, a light in his own darkness, refusing to go out even when everything else had died. A reminder that some flames survive not because they're strong, but because they're stubborn, because they refuse to believe the dark is final. He walked back to the house, climbed the stairs, entered Leia's room, something he hadn't done in 3 years. She was asleep in her bed, Shadow on the floor beside her, the red scarf draped over them both like a blessing. Caleb knelt. Carefully, gently, he pulled the blanket up over his daughter's shoulders. She stirred, whispered in her sleep, "Papa?" "I'm here," he said softly. "I'm right here." She settled, smiling slightly. Shadow opened one eye, watched Caleb for a long moment, then closed it again, some understanding passing between man and beast that needed no words. Caleb stayed there, kneeling beside the bed, until dawn began to gray the windows. Then he stood, walked downstairs, and began to plan. Not surrender, not obedience, rebellion. The quiet, dangerous kind that changes everything. Dawn arrived gray and cold. Caleb woke the household before sunrise. Tom Hendricks and the other ranch hands gathered in the yard, sensing something different in their boss. A hardness that wasn't cruelty, but determination. "Sheriff's coming today for the dog," Caleb said plainly. "I'm not giving him up." Silence. Then Tom spoke carefully. "Mr. Mercer, that's breaking the law." "I know. They'll arrest you." "Let them try." Caleb's voice was steel. "Shadow defended my daughter. That's not a crime. It's what any decent creature would do. And I'll be damned if I let Silas Crane twist justice to settle a grudge." The men exchanged glances. Finally, Tom nodded. "What do you need?" "Stand with me when they come. Don't draw weapons. Don't fight. Just stand. Show them this isn't just one man breaking a bad law. It's a community refusing to enforce cruelty." One by one, the hands nodded. Sheriff Wade arrived at mid-morning with 2 deputies, all 3 armed and uncomfortable. Wade was a decent man, caught in an indecent situation. He'd known Caleb 20 years, knew Shadow's history, but he also knew his job. Caleb met them at the gate, arms crossed. Behind him, every ranch hand stood in a line, silent, solid. "Caleb," Wade's voice was weary, "don't make this harder than it has to be. Where's the dog?" "Gone." "Gone where?" "Does it matter?" Caleb's eyes were flint. "He's not here. You can't execute what you can't find." Wade's jaw tightened. "You're obstructing justice." I'm correcting an injustice. There's a difference. The council took bribes from Silas Crane and called it law." Caleb stepped forward. "Wade, you were there. You saw what happened. Cole grabbed my daughter. Shadow defended her. That's not vicious. That's loyal. The law says, the law is wrong." The words came firm, clear. "And I won't follow a wrong law just because it's written down." One of the deputies shifted nervously. "Sheriff, we could arrest him for contempt." Wade looked at Caleb, then at the wall of men behind him. Arresting the richest rancher in the territory, a man who employed half the county, wasn't simple. "You've got until sundown," Wade said finally. "After that, it's a warrant for you and the dog." "Then come at sundown." Caleb didn't blink. "We'll be here." The sheriff left, but everyone knew he'd be back, and next time he'd bring more men. Caleb found Leia in the barn, arms wrapped around Shadow, face buried in his fur. "Papa?" Her voice was small, terrified. "Are they going to take him?" He knelt beside her. For the first time in 4 years, he reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold and small and trembling. "No, baby, they're not. But the law. Sometimes the law is wrong, and when it is, good people have to be brave enough to say so." She turned her blind face toward him, tears streaming. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let him go." "No!" She clutched Shadow tighter. "He's my friend. He needs me." "I know, but if he stays, they'll kill him. If he runs..." Caleb's throat tightened. "If he runs, he has a chance. He won't leave me. That's why we have to make him." An hour before sundown, Caleb led Shadow and Leia to the far edge of the property, where wilderness began and civilization ended. The snow had started again, light, drifting, turning the world soft and quiet. Leia stood with one hand on Shadow's collar, the other clutching the red scarf she'd taken from around his neck. "I don't want to say goodbye," she whispered. "I know." Caleb knelt, bringing himself level with his daughter. "But sometimes love means letting go. Your mother taught me that. She let go of you, in the fire, so you could live. Now we have to let go of Shadow so he can live too. But he's part of our family. He always will be. That doesn't change just because he's not standing beside you." Caleb touched her face, the first time he'd done so in years. "Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It just changes shape." Leia turned to Shadow, wrapped her arms around his neck one last time. "You have to run now, far away, where they can't find you." Shadow whined softly, pressing his head against her chest. "Be brave," she whispered, "like you taught me." Then she stepped back. Caleb took Shadow by the collar, led him 20 paces toward the wilderness. removed the collar, pointed toward the horizon. "Go," he said firmly. "Run. Don't come back." Shadow looked at him, then back at Leia, didn't move. Caleb fired his rifle into the air, a sharp crack that echoed across the plains. Shadow flinched, but held his ground. "Go," Caleb shouted, firing again. Still, Shadow stayed. His training, his instinct, his love, all of it binding him to the girl who'd saved him from dying alone. Then Leia did something Caleb would remember for the rest of his life. She pursed her lips and whistled, her mother's two-note call. Shadow's ears perked instantly. She whistled again, but this time, she changed it. Made it a release, not a recall. A melody that said, "I love you, but you have to go." Shadow trembled. Every muscle in his body screamed to return to her. But the sound, that specific pattern of notes, triggered something deeper than training. Trust, permission. He turned slowly and ran. Into the snow, into the wild, into the gray-white distance until he was just a shadow against the horizon, then nothing at all. Leia collapsed, sobbing. Caleb caught her, pulled her close, held her while she broke apart in his arms. "He's gone," she wailed. "He's gone, and he's never coming back." You saved his life," Caleb said into her hair. "That's what love does, baby. It saves what it can." And they stood there together, father and daughter, while snow fell and darkness gathered. And somewhere in the distance, a dog who'd learned to live again ran toward survival. But the day wasn't over. As they walked back to the house, riders appeared on the road. Not the sheriff, Silas Crane himself, flanked by 6 hired men, all armed. Crane's smile was cold and satisfied. "I heard you sent the dog away, Mercer. Very noble, very stupid. He's gone. That's what you wanted." "What I wanted was compliance. What I got was defiance." Crane dismounted smoothly. "You made me look weak in front of the council. That has consequences." "We name them. I'm calling in your loans. All of them. Due immediately." Crane's smile widened. "You've got 30 days to pay in full, or I take the ranch. Every acre, every building, everything." Caleb's blood went cold. He'd borrowed against the property to expand, standard practice. But full payment, all at once. "You can't do that." "I can. It's in the contract. Read the fine print." Crane's voice dripped poison. "You chose a dog over me, Mercer. Now you'll lose everything." The ranch hands shifted angrily. Tom stepped forward. "That's theft dressed up as law. That's business." Crane turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mercer, when you're homeless and broken, when your blind daughter has nothing but the clothes on her back, remember this moment. Remember that you chose to defy me." He rode away, laughter trailing behind him. Caleb stood frozen, the weight of what he'd done crashing down. He'd saved Shadow, but he'd just lost everything else. Leia's hand found his. "Papa, what does that mean?" He looked down at his daughter, blind, trusting, believing he could fix this. And for the first time, he had no answer that would make it better. "It means we fight," he said finally. "It means we find another way." But inside, he felt the walls closing in. He'd chosen mercy over law, and law was about to destroy him. 3 days of silence followed. Caleb worked numbers that wouldn't add up. Even selling half the herd wouldn't cover Crane's demand. The bank in Cheyenne wouldn't extend credit against property already mortgaged. He'd built an empire on leverage, and now that leverage had become a noose. Leia moved through the house like a ghost again. She barely ate, barely spoke, just sat by the window, listening for a sound that would never come. On the 3rd night, spring's final blizzard struck. It came fast and vicious, wind shrieking across the plains, snow falling so thick visibility dropped to arm's length. The kind of storm that killed cattle and buried fences and made the world disappear into white chaos. Caleb ordered everyone inside, battened down, lit every lamp. But when he counted heads at supper, someone was missing. "Where's Leia?" Tom's face went pale. "Thought she was in her room." They searched the house, the barn, the sheds. Her coat was gone. Her scarf, too, the red one. "She went looking for Shadow," Doc Martha said quietly, arriving through the storm. "I saw her heading east an hour ago. Tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen." East, toward the wilderness, into the storm. Caleb's blood turned to ice. "Get horses, lanterns, everyone rides." His voice was command, not request. They saddled in frantic silence, but the storm was apocalyptic. Wind tore the lanterns out. Snow blinded the horses. They couldn't see 10 feet ahead. Tom shouted over the wind, "We'll never find her in this." Caleb didn't answer. Just rode harder into the white scream, calling her name until his throat bled. But the storm swallowed everything. Miles away, at the edge of the wilderness, Leia huddled behind a rock outcropping. She'd been stupid. She knew that now. But she'd heard something, maybe a bark, maybe just wind. And hope had overridden sense. Now she was lost, freezing. The cold was a living thing, biting through her coat, numbing her fingers, making her thoughts slow and thick. She tried to whistle, her mother's song, Shadow's Call, but her lips were too numb. The sound came out broken, weak. I'm going to die out here. The thought arrived calm and certain, just like Mama. Papa won't be there again. She pulled the red scarf tighter, buried her face in wool that still smelled faintly of smoke and lavender and a mother 4 years gone. I'm sorry, Papa, she whispered to the storm. I'm sorry I couldn't be good enough. Then she closed her eyes and waited for the cold to finish what the fire had started. Shadow was 20 miles north, denned in a cave, when he heard it. Not a sound. Not at first. A feeling. A pull in his chest like invisible strings drawing tight. He lifted his head, ears swiveling. There, faint, almost lost in the wind, a two-note whistle. Broken, desperate, dying, her. Every instinct said stay, ride out the storm, survive. But something deeper than instinct moved him. Love. Duty. The thing that made a creature more than meat and bone and self-preservation. Shadow stood, limped to the cave entrance. The storm was a wall of white death. He stepped into it anyway. The journey was agony. Snow packed his paws until he couldn't feel them. Wind drove ice into his eyes. His old bullet wound, healed but never forgotten, reopened with each stride, blood painting the snow behind him in a crimson trail. But he didn't stop. He followed the sound, that whistle, growing fainter with each mile, but still there, still calling, come home, come home, come home. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs shook, until the world became nothing but white and cold in the next step forward. And still he ran. Because that's what love did. It ran toward the sound of need, even when running meant dying. Leia felt it before she heard it. Warmth against her face. Breath that wasn't wind. A rough tongue licking the snow from her frozen cheeks. She opened her eyes, saw nothing, never would, but her hands found fur, solid and real, in there. Shadow. Her voice was barely a whisper, a whine, a cold nose pressing against her neck. You came back. He pressed closer, trying to warm her with his body, but he was shaking too, cold, exhausted, bleeding. She felt the wetness on his shoulder. You're hurt. He gripped her coat sleeve gently in his teeth. Pulled. I can't. I'm too cold. He pulled harder, insistent. Get up. Move. Live. Somehow she stood, leaned against him, let him guide her. Step by step through the blizzard, Shadow led her home. He could barely walk himself. His paws left bloody prints. His breathing came ragged and harsh, but he didn't stop, didn't falter. Kept moving until lights appeared through the snow. The ranch house, every window blazing. They stumbled into the yard together and collapsed. Caleb, returning from another fruitless search, saw them from the gate. Two shapes in the snow, barely moving. He ran, reached them, fell to his knees. Leia! She was blue-lipped, shaking, but alive. Shadow lay beside her, blood staining the snow, his good eye barely open. He saved me, Leia whispered. He came back. Caleb lifted his daughter, light as a child should never be, and carried her toward the house. Doc Martha met them at the door, already barking orders, but Leia twisted in his arms. Shadow! Don't leave Shadow! Tom Hendricks was already there, lifting the dog as gently as a newborn, carrying him inside, where warmth and light waited. They laid Shadow by the fire. Doc Martha worked on Leia first, warming, checking for frostbite, forcing hot broth down her throat. Then she turned to the dog. The wound was bad. The old bullet injury torn open, infected, bleeding freely. His paws were shredded, his body temperature dangerously low. Will he live? Leia asked from her nest of blankets. Doc Martha's hands worked steadily, stitching, cleaning, bandaging. He's a fighter, but he's lost a lot of blood. Leia unwrapped the red scarf from around her neck, the one that had kept her warm, the one Shadow had run through a blizzard to reach, and tucked it gently around the dog. Mama's scarf saved me, now it saves you. Shadow's tail twitched, once, barely. His eye found Leia's face, and something passed between them that needed no words. I came back for you. I know, thank you. Caleb knelt beside them both, one hand on his daughter's shoulder, the other resting on Shadow's head. You brought her home, he said softly. You saved her. Shadow's breathing slowed, steadied. And for the first time since the storm began, Caleb let himself believe they might all survive this. Shadow slept for 2 days straight. Doc Martha kept vigil, changing bandages, forcing water down his throat when he woke briefly, monitoring the fever that came and went like tide. Leia refused to leave his side. She slept on the floor beside him, one hand always touching his fur, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing. Still here, she'd whisper each time she woke. Still here. So on the third morning, Shadow opened both eyes, the good one clear, the clouded one somehow less vacant, and his tail thumped against the floor 3 times, steady as a heartbeat. Leia's face split into a smile that could have lit the whole territory. Papa! He's awake! Caleb came running from the kitchen, coffee forgotten, knelt beside them both. Shadow lifted his head slowly, licked Leia's hand, then turned and pressed his nose against Caleb's palm. A gesture of recognition, maybe even forgiveness. Welcome back, Caleb said quietly. Doc Martha appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, trying to hide her own relief. Well, tougher than leather this one, just like I said. He's the bravest dog in the world, Leia declared. Bravest anything, I'd say, Doc Martha smiled. Though he's earned a long rest, no running, no adventures. Just healing, Shadow's tail thumped again, as if agreeing. Word spread fast in Coldwater. The blind girl lost in the blizzard. The vicious dog running 20 miles through the storm to save her. The blood trail in the snow that told the story better than any testimony. People came, not to gawk, but to witness. Ben Farrow arrived with a sack of beef bones. For the hero, he said gruffly, not meeting Caleb's eyes, embarrassed by his own emotion. Mrs. Henderson from the general store brought a knitted blanket. For the child and the dog, both deserve to be warm. Even families Caleb barely knew made the trek. Ranchers, merchants, farmers, bringing food, supplies, and something more valuable, their voices. We heard what Crane did, old Dutch Miller said, hat in his weathered hands. Calling in your loans like that? It ain't right. It's legal, Caleb replied tiredly. Legal and right ain't always the same thing. Dutch looked at the others gathered in the yard. We've been talking. The whole county's been talking. Tom Hendricks stepped forward. Crane holds mortgages on half of us, uses them like chains. We're tired of it, Mr. Mercer. Tired of one man owning everybody's future. What are you saying? We're saying we won't bank with him anymore. Mrs. Henderson's voice was firm. We're pulling our money, moving it to the bank in Cheyenne. Let's see how powerful Crane is when nobody trusts him with their savings. Caleb stared. You'd risk that? For me? For you? For your girl? For that dog? Ben Farrow's voice was rough. For the idea that mercy matters more than money. One by one they nodded, a community making a choice. Standing together against the law that had become tyranny. The impact was immediate. Within a week, Silas Crane's bank saw a mass exodus. Accounts closed. Loans transferred. His power, built entirely on other people's money, evaporated like snow in sunshine. The town council, sensing the shift, quietly invalidated Shadow's death sentence. Upon review of new evidence, they claimed, though everyone knew it was cowardice dressed as justice. Crane tried to enforce the loan recall, but without capital to operate, without community support, his threats were empty. He left Coldwater 2 weeks later, bitter and broken, headed for Denver, to start fresh where his reputation hadn't yet caught up to him. Sheriff Wade stopped by the ranch the day after Crane left. Guess you don't need that warrant anymore, he said, looking sheepish. Guess not. Caleb didn't gloat, just nodded. You were in a hard position, Wade. I was. But you showed me something, that sometimes the bravest thing is breaking a bad law. He tipped his hat. Your daughter and that dog are something special, Mercer. Don't take them for granted. Never again, Caleb promised, and meant it. Spring returned for real this time. Snow melted. Green pushed through brown. The world remembered how to be soft. Shadow healed slowly but surely. His limp never quite disappeared, and his shoulder bore new scars, but his eyes were bright and his spirit strong. He'd learned something in that storm, that running toward love was worth more than running toward safety. One evening, Leia and Caleb sat on the porch, something they'd started doing every night. Shadow rested at their feet, the red scarf still tied loosely around his neck. Papa? Leia's voice was thoughtful. Yes, baby? Do you still miss Mama? Every single day? Me too. She was quiet for a moment. But I think she's happy, because we have each other now. Really have each other. Caleb looked at his daughter, her face turned toward the sunset she couldn't see, but somehow felt. He took her hand, small, warm, real. You're right, he said. We do. She leaned against his shoulder. And we have Shadow. And we have Shadow. The dog's tail thumped against the porch boards. Papa? Leia's voice was mischievous now. Can I tell you something funny? Always. Doc Martha says Shadow eats better than most people. Says he's getting fat. Caleb looked at the dog, still lean, still strong, but definitely healthier than the skeleton they'd brought home from the shelter. Maybe a little, he admitted. Good. Leia grinned. Heroes should eat well. Shadow's tail thumped faster, as if he understood and agreed completely. For the first time in years, Caleb laughed. A real laugh, from the belly, the kind that felt like sunlight after winter. Leia joined him, and then Shadow added a soft woof. and the porch filled with the sound of a family learning to be whole again. That night, Caleb did something he hadn't done in 4 years. He stood at the window where the oil lamp burned, his nightly ritual, his penance, his prayer to a ghost, and he invited Leia to stand beside him. "Will you help me with something?" She came, curious, felt his hands guide hers to the lamp. "What are we doing?" "Lighting your mother's lamp, together." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Papa, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Who are we lighting it for now?" He thought about that, about Sarah, 4 years gone, about the empty grave that would stay empty, about the living who needed light more than the dead. "For anyone who needs to find their way home," he said finally. Leia smiled. "I like that." They stood together in the window, father, daughter, and dog, the lamp burning bright between them. Outside, the plains stretched silver under the moon. Inside, for the first time in years, the Mercer house was full of light, and warmth, and love that had learned to speak again. 2 months later, Leia knelt in the cemetery, pressing a young pine sapling into the earth beside her mother's grave. Shadow sat beside her, one paw resting on the disturbed soil, as if blessing the planting. "Mama, I want you to meet my best friend." Her voice was soft but strong. "This is Shadow. He's brave and kind, and he saved me, just like you did." She patted the earth firm around the roots. "Papa helped me choose the tree. He says by the time I'm grown, it'll be tall enough to shade both your graves, yours and the empty one." The empty grave, still there, still waiting, but no longer a prophecy. Just a hole that would slowly fill with time and grass and forgetting. Caleb stood nearby, hat in hands, watching his daughter plant life where death had tried to take root. "She's so much like Sarah," Doc Martha murmured beside him. "No," Caleb said quietly. "She's better. She's what Sarah and I could have been if we'd been braver." That evening, the ritual changed. For 4 years, Caleb had lit Sarah's lamp alone, a penance, a prayer, a light for ghosts. Tonight, Leia lit it herself, her small hands steady on the match, the flame rising gold and warm. "Who are we lighting it for, Papa?" He looked at his daughter, blind eyes reflecting firelight, shadow pressed against her side, the red scarf draped over them both like a blessing. "For people who need to find home," he said. "For lost things that want to be found." She smiled. "And for us, so we remember we already are home." They stood together in the window, father, daughter, dog. Outside, the plains were silver under stars. Inside, the lamp burned. And somewhere, in the space between earth and heaven, a woman who died saving her child smiled. Because the family she'd left behind had finally learned what she'd always known. That mercy isn't weakness. That love doesn't end when someone leaves. That broken things, if given light and time and grace, can become beautiful again. The story ends not with words, but with light.